Hello there, folks. My name is Anuj Rutger. I am back. Let's. We're going to go ahead and start with the first game of the first showcase slot, which is Virtoojin. We'll go over introductions really quickly, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the game. We'll first have Ben, the developer, introduce himself, and then we'll go with Jason and Jules. Go ahead. I'll get started with playing.
Hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm from Poland, from the Opolski region. My game is Virtoojin, which is a customizable virtual pet game, inspired a little bit by Neopets and Tamagotchi.
And for introducing ourselves, my name is Jules. Once again, I'm event coordinator here, and I'll be kind of like asking questions for today.
Yeah, and I'm Jason. I'm SGDA's president. I'll just be here helping Anuj and Jules sort of along here.
But all right, as we see, we're going to showing off the gameplay for Virtoojin, and as we're seeing this, Ben, did you want to go ahead and kind of like talk about the game, like kind of like explain what we're seeing when we get started?
Yeah, no problem. It's sort of this idea that I first came up with in 2014 when I was just starting my game development journey in Scratch, so it was a long time ago, let's say. It was actually my first real project that I had an idea for. At the time, I was kind of discovering the old school Tamagotchi devices, or, well, newer iterations of them. Like Tamagotchi Friends, I think, was the most current one. And I thought that would be a cool idea to kind of make that in Scratch with some ideas of my own, maybe make it a little bit like some sort of a sandbox project where people could do a lot of different things, or at least like customize it somewhat, which was an idea that I tried to pursue. It worked out to some extent, but not fully. And later on, I started rewriting it in a couple of different two different languages. First, it was App Inventor, which was sort of the Scratch-esque Android thing by MIT, I think, which is quite interesting, and it was a nice experiment. But outside of making some of the graphics that were later used in the current version, it wasn't exactly finished by me. And then I tried rewriting it in ClickTeam Fusion, which is the version that is the current one. Although first it had an issue of my hard drive breaking down without me having a proper save file of the project elsewhere, so I had to rewrite it. And so that's kind of the story of how we got here to this current version. Originally, the game was called Kulker, which is sort of a pun on the Polish word kulka, which means an orb, a small orb. Yeah.
Awesome, yeah. And then like kind of like expanding on that, did you want to talk more specifically on like development, like any kind of like going more in depth into like more of like the issues you had, or like some like the obstacles you had to face like while developing this game?
I think the biggest obstacle was properly finishing and making work the date and time system, which is sort of what a virtual pet game should be based on to some extent, if we're trying to have the user come back to the pet every once in a while, which was a pretty big issue early. The Scratch version didn't have it at all. Later, I managed to add some features, and actually, if I remember correctly, I was just like sitting up until 3 a.m. and at some point, I not magically, but it was like I wasn't sure it would work. I was just like putting in random stuff to see if the numbers would do anything, and at some point, I was like, oh, actually, when I change the calendar on my laptop, it actually works. So that was the moment of the success, kind of, which was probably the biggest issue. Another issue is the game features media players, which are sort of these ways you can have fun with the pet, sort of expanding on the core virtual pet idea. And the thing with them was originally, if the names of the files had spaces in them, they wouldn't work, and neither could the folders in between, like in between the drive name up until the file. But I managed to work it out in the end. That wasn't like a very big issue, but it was definitely to sort of counterintuitive to most people I sent the game to, because the files wouldn't work for them, and I would have to explain that they would have to rename all the folders in between, sort of, to make them work, which was kind of a lot of work for something that was just meant to be a little bit of a fun gimmick. There's also the paint feature, which is the one that actually the background of the of one of the main screens was earlier changed through, which is inspired by of course the built-in Microsoft Paint. It's sort of this idea that I also had back in Scratch, which was originally just the character drawing a line behind him, and later on I figured out how to make this work properly as intended, while also connecting to the main feature of the game, which is importing images as both the character and the backgrounds, sort of making the players able to put in their OCs, their favorite anime gaming characters. I tested it out for fun with Sans from Undertale and some backgrounds from the game, as they were kind of flat and worked decently well with the concept. So yeah, there's a minigame section that was presented earlier. It's inspired by old arcade cabinets, as my father is an arcade operator, service and lender, etc. So I was always kind of close, even though I'm 20 years old, I was always kind of close to the 90s or 80s kind of retro gaming things, and I collect consoles nowadays, so I'm kind of still in that place, let's say. So yeah, the mini games are inspired by those experiences in some way, and also the slight arcade-like menu that I made for them. So that's kind of that part of the experience. There is also a shop, which was also presented earlier. It's sort of an ability to customize the main skin of the character if someone doesn't want to upload their own files into the game. There's a feature which presents codes that you can share with your friends, and if you have sort of a basic version of the robot, the kind of vacuum cleaner as your game kind of as your game's pet, you can share it around with some friends, and they can kind of play around with it as if it's not really multiplayer, but it's sort of inspired by those concepts also from Tamagotchi back in the days, where putting two infrared Tamagotchis together would kind of move them between the games, sort of. What else? There's a feature that I'm currently working on, kind of still set the game in the 2000s kind of nostalgia flash game-like era, which is the ability to have internet radio in the background. I wouldn't provide any links to servers, but it would be possible for a player to insert a link of their own that would play, especially since the game is pretty much silent in the background while the game would run. So yeah, that's sort of the main concept, is kind of the inspiration, sort of a love letter to Neopets and all of the other Club Penguin. Panfu was pretty popular in Poland. It was sort of like a German game with pandas, kind of in the same vein. I don't think it exists anymore. just fun recreations nowadays. Yeah, so here is the ranking screen and sort of the score of the game, which is just like a little indicator of how much a player. Oh, there's so much. Yeah, the game is sort of this kind of open-ended project that I'm adding stuff onto. Like whenever I come up with an idea, or like in the case of the radio, it was actually a pretty old idea, since I, as a child, would be and still am currently a part of a university radio station. Probably no one is listening to me right now, but well, hello to all the university station people, which is my kind of fascination with music, with the radio. I used to go to some radio-based festivals here and meet up with some radio people, and kind of had this idea that maybe I could get some radio-like features in my game, or like some music picking tool to play around with. But obviously music requires licensing, and so I figured out the media player and a radio server player would probably be the best ideas to kind of make into reality. What else? Actually, one of the most recent additions that was pretty important in the grand scheme of things is the calendar, which shows how many days, or well, in Tamagotchi it was years, a pet has, which wasn't present in most versions prior to this one, that is the one currently available on itch.io. It's not the newest, but it added some things like that, since I thought it would be interesting for a player to remember how long they've been playing with that particular pet, as the pets do sort of get away from the player if they don't take care of them. Like in the case of Tamagotchi, it was mostly death. In the case of this game, is just flying away to another planet, which at the time was the robot with the blue screen. It was inspired a little bit by Eva from Wall-E, if I can just like reminisce on some of the small inspirations. I remember at the time, and a little bit earlier when I just had my Wii, kind of liking the whole Galaxy aspect of the Super Mario Galaxy series. And even though Tamagotchis are already kind of aliens and stuff, that also took a little bit of that also is a little bit of the inspiration towards the space aspect to some extent. What else? The game actually had a spin-off, and this is actually a pretty interesting story. Originally, the character had legs and arms, and was a little bit less. Well, wasn't. It was just like a circular robot, and wasn't a vacuum cleaner. And the vacuum cleaner aspect actually came to me when I was designing a very basic, sort of my first Android project, kind of a spin-off where there would be some holes and the player couldn't fall into them, just kind of moving around them to collect stars, which were the sort of collectibles in the original Scratch version of the game. And that was actually when I designed the vacuum cleaner. I originally called it Kulker Junior, based on the original title. And so it was sort of like this little project I did for myself. I did publish it, and I had some friends play it, but it wasn't. So it was quite an interesting experience, like trying out Android App Inventor and kind of coming up with this variant of the character, which is the one I currently stayed with, partially because it's easier to insert images as a character which already isn't animated in a way, which kind of helps to make work. There's also this feature of kind of animating the character. If someone inserts an image, they can have the image stretch when walking to sort of give the illusion of animation to the game. What else is there? If you have any questions, you can ask them. I just kind of went into this.
No worries. Hey, this is your game. You should be proud, and I'm really glad to see like how passionate you are about this game. And if I'm like not like, and you can correct me on this. This is not the first time we're seeing Virtoojin in the summit. So we've progressively seen more and more progress on this.
Yeah,
right?
it's sort of this long-term project. As I've mentioned, I started it's 10 years ago. It's sort of like the kind of 10-year anniversary. It was in early May, I think, if I remember correctly. So it's a thing I'm very passionate about. It's sort of this kind of like I remember just how to say it, coming back to it every now and then, rewriting some of the stuff in Scratch or later in this form it is right now. But right now I'm less rewriting and more just kind of adding more stuff on top of the existing things. The one thing I'm currently looking into is the ability to port the game, but with how many of the features are based on Windows built-in kind of objects and sort of aspects of the calendar and how it works in Windows. For now, I'm kind of sticking to the current. Now it's a little bit animated. Now I'm kind of sticking with the current version, let's say. And yeah, one of the newer additions was the dark mode, which I kind of based on how many users tend to use, for example, Discord in dark mode, and I wanted to give them the ability to not look at the white background all the time if they find it a little bit annoying or just in some ways not the preferred kind of way. And also in the early versions, most of the buttons were just kind of images similar to the map, which made it a little bit confusing at the time. So one of the newer versions kind of changed them into these kind of pixel artsy sort of old Nokia-esque images. They are now usually blue. In dark mode they're kind of cream colored, let's say. Trying to think about some other additions or things that I'm working on. There will be a tiny sort of demonstrational version of one of my other games built into the arcade. There's a game I'm currently working on that's called Paddy the Penguin, which is sort of like Arkanoid-esque, with the paddle being a sort of a cute little penguin character. The game features this level editor with the ability to share the levels between friends, and this game will have a sort of a mini game based on that title to kind of cross promote them. It's already, I think it's in the code of this version. It's just not present for the player because I had to still work on it a little bit. And there's also the arcade pass, which unlocks an additional mini game. All of the mini games actually in this game were kind of based on ideas I had before, but they weren't like expandable into full titles. There is, although, the one title called Epiplaphobia, which is sort of a infinite runner that where you run away from a haunted cupboard in like a furniture store that gives points to use in Virtoojin, despite the fact it's not built in. It was just like an additional kind of additional mini game that's usable if someone wants to download it from my itch.io page. I'm trying to think about if there's anything else to mention. I've also been reworking some of my prior older titles. For example, Dumpling Express, which was originally a Newgrounds published HTML5 series of 2 games, now also available on itch.io with some Virtoojin compatible features like the points coming in the future, probably in my next update. And there also will be a mini game based on that here too. So I'm kind of let's call it making some multiverse sort of types of little references to my other games inside of it, which was also one of the ideas behind the new remake. I originally wanted it to be sort of like a hub for some of my other games, and that's sort of what I'm currently doing to this version. I'm thinking if there's anything else I would like to add someday. Yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
the game looks amazing, Ben. I mean, Anuj was the one playing it this entire time. What are your thoughts?
Let me unmute myself really quickly. I had a lot of fun. I was trying to get to that 200 gold mark, so that I could get the new game. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I honestly will keep our little SGDA Virtoojin on my computer for a little bit.
Yeah,
As we
it's fun to play around with. I remember sending it to some streamers, them kind of putting in memes, and that was like a lot of fun just seeing them goofing around, because that's sort of the whole idea of the game. It's not meant to be serious, it's just like this little piece of nostalgia mixed with some ideas of mine, basically.
Yeah, awesome. We're coming to the end of this section. So really quickly, just to end it off, Ben, did you want to shout anyone out before we end?
Well, there's probably my grandpa listening to me right now. He's one of the people who got me into computers and programming, and I remember getting an older Visual Studio, I think, book from him and stuff when I was younger that was made actually for children. It was a little bit confusing at the time, especially with how it was for the 90X versions of Windows, but it was kind of interesting. And I would like to probably shout out my GF and the rest of my family, and kind of the radio station, if they would end up ever hearing this. And the Gummy Bear and Crazy Frog Discord servers, which I'm an admin of, and the rest of the team I would like to shout out to.
Awesome. All right. And with that was Virtoojin. Right.
Yeah. Thank you, SGDA, and thank you, the team. And it was an amazing experience to be here.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right. Our next
was a
game
pleasure.
that's going to be presented up next will be Soar of the Forest from University of Michigan. So stay tuned for that. See y'all later.